Hey everybody, this here's Tim.
This is Dane.
And welcome to Was It Worth It, brought to you by SharcTank Media. That's SharcTank with a C, because sharks come from the sea. Anyway, Was It Worth It, for those who don't know, is a part review, part podcast show where Dane and I play a cheap indie game and then discuss our experiences with the game and then say whether or not we think it's worth the money that we paid for said game.
This week, man, I'm already going to give away how I feel about this one. We made the unfortunate mistake of playing Gravity Badgers, developed and published by Wales Interactive and purchased on Steam for $5. Gravity Badgers is a casual physics-based puzzle game where you're tasked with launching a badger in a spacesuit across various levels set in outer space, with the goal of not only collecting up to 3 small glowing orbs, but also reaching the wormhole at the end of the level.
I kind of assumed those glowing orbs were supposed to be stars, which doesn't really make sense because stars would be way more massive than the planets. And
well, considering the fact that there actually are little planets, like, in the levels.
Exactly, yeah. Well, but then again, all the planets are stationary anyway, so if we're going to get technical. But also, you know, when the level ends and it shows your score or whatever, it shows 1 to 3 stars. Exactly. So I kind of figured, okay, what are you collecting stars? You know.
So they're stars in only the scoring sense.
Yes.
But really there is not a lot of story or continuity in this game, so to continue, the gameplay is very similar to Angry Birds, in which you click on your badger and pull back to determine how hard and at what angle you want to launch them. There are various types of obstacles that can block your path to the wormhole, and a number of physics-based mechanics in the form of blue and red planets that push you away or pull you toward them respectively, as well as teleporters that function much like the portals in the game Portal. There's the occasional quote-unquote boss battle, but they can hardly be called a battle, considering they just involve rapidly sending your badger to different points on the screen while the boss just kind of kills itself, I guess?
Well, yeah, you shoot around and you're shooting lasers out of yourself at the boss.
But you don't really shoot the lasers,
your character shoots them, but you just send your character flying around while he
ice
shoots.
Cubes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know, because ice cubes, it makes sense that ice cubes would allow you to fly in
I think the thought process there is that when you're on the ice cube, you're stationary. It's like the only time you can stay still and choose where you want to go. So in that effect, you are quote-unquote chilling.
Yeah.
I honestly think that is the developer's thought process.
It could be.
But that's really the gist of what this game has to offer. There may be 1 or 2 other things I didn't mention.
Yeah, I think their goal is to set it up something like Candy Crush, where they have a very loose story, and then you go through episodes, and then they're like, oh, stay tuned for more episodes after you finished them all. So I think it's going to be a thing where they're trying to follow Candy Crush's the template the Candy Crush set, where they intend to release more levels episodically.
Sure. However, it's not really like Candy Crush in that there's nothing that you pay for to like get more turns or anything.
Right,
like
yeah.
that.
There's no pay to win.
But paying for episodes, I could see them trying to do that. Although in my research of this game, I haven't seen much popularity, so I'd be surprised if it did well enough for them to keep going with it.
Yeah, they probably won't. But at the end of the game, when I finished it, it said, stay tuned for more. We'll release new episodes at this point. Or whatever.
And actually, this is the first time where you actually played more of the game than I did. In this case, well, not the first time technically. I think we both played Deadlight about the same amount of time.
Sure.
But I think you definitely played more of this one. You finished it. I didn't actually end up finishing it because I couldn't stand it. Or rather, I guess I could stand it less than you. Somehow.
Yeah, well, you know, it was a real struggle to actually finish it.
Sure.
And as you remember, as soon as I finished it...
you didn't have very nice things to say about it.
No. I'm
you used choice language.
I'm debating whether or not I should repeat that language. But maybe I won't. Maybe if you want to know what I said, just shoot me an email.
Yeah, or leave a comment.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, to stick to standard conventions, we can kind of break this one down with the usual categories, starting with gameplay. Like I mentioned, it plays just like Angry Birds, except with the push and pull physics puzzles instead of knocking shit down onto pigs. Now, let it be known, I'm not really a fan of Angry Birds or the casual mobile game market in the first place. I mean, I do see the positive aspects of those games. I even used to burn time playing Angry Birds when iOS and Android were still a lot newer. But I don't like the effect that those types of games has on the game industry. The design of the games... Yeah, a cancer.
Yes.
The design of the games are kind of extremely lazy, but still carry a potential for massive profits, which basically encourages developers to continue to be that lazy.
It's essentially the equivalent of pop music, where you take something that takes very little skill and effort and just chug it out as much as you can, as long as people are willing to pay money for it.
Sure.
It's funny that I say that, because I actually do like a lot of pop music, just because of the entertainment value, not because of it's in art or anything like that. But it's a very good business model for someone who's worrying about personal profits and not really caring about the state of the industry that they're producing in.
Sure. And I do agree with you. Like, I also feel that pop music is not necessarily an art. It doesn't quite take as much, raw talent, but a lot of it is really catchy, and I find myself dancing to it.
Oh yeah, dude. Like I said, I like a lot of pop music.
Sure.
And the thing is, it's just, it's kind of like a to each their own type thing,
Definitely.
As long as someone finds it entertaining, then you can't really judge them for spending money on it, but
yeah,
we will anyway.
but yeah,
well, not
games,
really, but we,
games like these, I don't know, there's not enough to them. Also, I just really don't want to be playing ultra casual mobile based games when I'm sitting at my desk on the computer. To be completely honest, I had no idea this game was going to be a mobile port before we picked it, but oh well. I mean, at least I knew after roughly 2 hours of playing through shitty levels, collecting little orbs, that I'd never needed to play the game again in my life.
Yeah, they were really pointless, those orbs. And this is funny because you get to some of the quote-unquote harder levels where you essentially start next to your wormhole. So you could finish the level immediately if you want to just move on to the next one. Or you can go through the painstaking process of actually trying to get all of the orbs. But yeah, as Dane mentioned, I mean, the levels are really poorly designed, and I mean, I won't go into it too much because it is just a casual game, but I mean, the levels were a mess. There's just too many levels that have too many different planets just splattered all over, and you're supposed to be able to, like physics games, you're supposed to be able to intuit what you're supposed to do and try to make a best guess as to what, but really in this game, it was just like they just threw out random planets and then gave essentially a line of orbs that told you, hey, this is roughly the direction you need to go in, because you have no idea that was where you were supposed to go otherwise, because the level was just such a mess.
Well, there's like 6 chapters with 40 little levels in each of them, so you just
25 apiece.
25 apiece?
Yeah.
Sorry. And you'll come across like the same level multiple times. I'll be like, I'm pretty sure I've done this level before, where it's like a row of red planets on the top and blue planets on the bottom, and the wormholes at the end, and you just shoot straight forward.
Yeah, and like I think for the first 50 levels or so, probably 80% of those levels, if you just shot at the nearest orb at full strength, you would solve
You'd hit all 3 orbs and win. Yep. I know. I mean, essentially that's probably the equivalent if they're like ease you into the game kind of tutorial type thing,
right.
But that's too much.
When it does it 15 times in a row, it's just kind of painstaking.
I'd say there's really not much more to say about the gameplay. To move on to the graphics, considering this game is an obvious iOS/Android port, there's not much to be impressed by. The badgers themselves are just 2D drawings, and they do this silly like turnaround thing where it kind of looks like a piece of paper flipping over. Similar to how it looks when Mario turns around in the Paper Mario games, except nowhere near as charming or stylish in presentation.
Yeah.
The background of every level is a super bland, static image of space. Blackness with some stars scattered about.
Time.
Yeah, well, it changes a little bit. There's different galaxy-type things in the background.
Oh yeah,
but
slightly different colors.
Yes, exactly.
Like the Mass Effect 3 endings.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Oh,
no spoilers here. Yeah, and there's a weird sort of mix of plain-looking 3D models and boring 2D drawings. Like, the bits of space debris are clearly 2D, but the teleporters are little 3D rings with, like, blue or purple light inside of them. Obviously, style wasn't on the top of their list here to keep it consistent and make it look impressive, but that's still worth criticizing.
It was garbage.
It's obvious that there just wasn't enough effort put into it to get the job done, since the game itself is so simple in design. Did you have anything to add about the graphics?
Nope. I said the one word that I used to express it.
Gotcha. Yeah, the music in this game, once again, goes the bare minimum to get the job done. The little opening butt rock track that screamed Power Rangers parody was cheesy and fun.
Yeah, that was like the only thing that I liked.
Even if it was like a 15-second loop, but
sure.
Just like all the other tracks in the game, though, nothing else in this game sounds like that kind of intro rock track. Mm-hmm. But each chapter has one song that basically plays in every single level of the chapter, and the songs themselves are basically a 20-second loop of a vaguely spacey-sounding melody.
Yeah, and some of them I don't even think they're 20 seconds. They might be like a 12-second
10 or 12.
loop. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, and what's there isn't terrible by any means, but it's so plain. And when you hear the same 12 to 20 second track looped over and over, you get sick of it quickly, especially when you're constantly repeating a single level in an effort to reach the wormhole. It makes sense to me now why I had absolutely no success locating a purchasable or downloadable soundtrack for this game. I couldn't even find any mentioning of the game on the composer's website, so it was clearly just a simple little composition that was crapped out, not worth mentioning. Even if I did go through the effort of ripping the soundtrack out of the game itself, the tracks are so short and bland that I wouldn't bother trying to put them in the background of this week's episode, which is why you're hearing some tracks by the talented Color Pulse instead.
And I mean, it was a port, so I guess not many mobile games have very detailed music tracks or anything like that, so it's not too surprising.
Although I wonder if the mobile version was like a free game with ads, or if it was also $5 on mobile. So to charge $5 for that just because it's on Steam.
Yeah, I was wondering about that myself, and I actually looked it up, and it is free with ads on Google Play Store.
Yeah, I figured as much. So it's $5 because it's on Steam and you get to play it on your PC, but you still get all of that lovely mobile phone quality.
Yeah, and speaking of it being a port to PC, there were quite a few glitches, particularly on the later boss battles, which Dan didn't actually, he wasn't lucky enough to experience those boss battles. I won't go into too much detail, but suffice it to say that they were completely and utterly broken.
Ouch.
Yeah,
I really missed out.
Yeah, especially the last boss. It's just, there's a point where you're essentially launching a missile out of your ship, and the ship never showed up. So I just had to, I had to guess as to spot in blank space where it was, and then aim from there.
Nice.
And not only that, but it was like the last phase of several other phases, and because I couldn't see my ship, I kept shooting the rocket wrong, and your rocket crash was the same as a badger dying, so I'd lose a life, and I'd end up inevitably having to redo the whole boss battle. It's
awesome. You're a trooper, dude.
Tell me about it. Okay. Yeah.
So, the last thing I wanted to mention here, and it doesn't even make sense to try and bring this up for this particular game, but we mention it for all of our games, the story. There really is none, although they try and have some with these weird little cutscenes.
They're like these really awkward cutscenes. Well, they're rough. They're kind of like, well, I guess technically they're cutscenes because they're a scene,
and it cuts to it.
They're cuts to exactly. It's just like this awkward painting essentially of a scene, and then it slowly fades around to different parts of the painting with this super moody, depressing, string classical music in the background. Yeah. It's just really weird.
Yeah, and I don't even get, like, it's showing a scene, but that has nothing to do with anything in the game.
Yeah, it's just like badgers that are like
shooting lasers
or being attacked by a worm or something. I don't know. It's bizarre.
Yeah, I think it's actually trying to kind of mimic those little scenes in Angry Birds where you see like a pig stealing the bird's eggs.
Oh, I've never played Angry Birds, to be honest with you.
That's the thing that happens, so.
Okay.
I guess that's what that's probably trying to be. Yeah, that's the story.
Okay, so I guess we can just go ahead and get to the whole sum up our experiences part of our review. My experience was that it was okay at first, and then once I realized after the 5th level that it was the first, who knows how many levels were all the same.
Mm-hmm.
I got kind of annoyed, and then I just kind of pushed through from there. I don't know if I got... Okay, I did get a little bit of joy out of this game, and that's those really rare moments where I just shot at a random angle and just so happened to get some crazy orbit where I swung around the screen a couple times just to hit, just to randomly hit my target.
I did have that experience a couple times where I kind of just shot where I guessed I had to shoot, and then it really did kind of take you around the gravitation of the planet, and then you get all 3 stars and right into the wormhole.
Yeah,
it felt like sinking a hole in one.
Yeah, exactly. It did some really unexpected, but ultimately pretty cool. But I mean, honestly, to do that 3 times out of 125 levels is totally not worth. I mean, this game is not worth even $5, which I thought I'd have a really hard time coming into this justifying a game not being worth $5, because $5 is it's not that much. It's a venti latte mochaccino.
Yeah, it's less than like a Big Mac combo.
Yeah, exactly. So, but ultimately, I got 5 minutes of joy out of the 3 hours that I played.
Yeah,
so
and if you think about it like that, time's money.
Yeah, it's definitely not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think there's any more to say about this game than what I already have. I'll try to sum up my experience with it. Upon loading it up, I realized immediately that it was an Angry Birds clone, like we mentioned. It made sense to me at that point why it was only $5. I shot badgers through stupid levels and cleared the first 4 chapters of the game in about 2 hours before I decided I never wanted to play it again. It was definitely not worth it, and I know $5 isn't a lot of money, you know, like we just mentioned, but I never would have given two shits about a game like this if we didn't choose it pretty much randomly for a review show.
Well, it wasn't entirely random. We wanted to try doing a game that's cheap because we were like,
we did want to pick a $5 game.
Yeah, exactly. We wanted to pick a cheaper game, thinking, oh, this would be more of a challenge to try to justify a cheaper game, but ultimately it wasn't difficult at all.
Yeah, well, there are so many better experiences I could have had with that $5, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I wouldn't recommend getting the free app of this game just because it's not worth it.
Yeah.
But I do want to make a recommendation. If you are interested in physics puzzles, there's a guy who does Flash games. I've seen his stuff on Congregate as well as Armor Games. His name is Funky Pear, and he has a series of games that originated from I believe the origin anyway, is a golfing game called Gravity, but you know, the T being a TE, like a golf tee, which is essentially a physics golf game. And then there's Gravity and Gravity 2, and I believe Gravity Wars, and basically they're free, fun physics puzzle Flash games that, you know, you can pick up and play if you're interested in a physics puzzle, but there's no obligation. It's just fun. Anyway, so I guess that's it for Gravity Badger. So which game are we doing next week, Dan?
We are going to try out a game called Ring Runner Flight of the Sages.
Right, yeah, it's a cool looking space combat RPG, so it'll be interesting to see how that, you know.
Yeah, it seems like the gameplay is mostly, you know, flying around in space and you know, shooting like a space shooter, but there's 30 hours of, you know, story-driven gameplay.
Yeah.
So it said.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited to play it.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
See ya.